How does an 8-year-old boy get such power? A glacial gaze and scars that told a lifetime of pain and servitude. This was the countenance of the man known as the Hound. Under the relentless glow of the moonlight, Vakir awaits the guillotine's kiss, surrounded by guards who tremble before his aura, even while chained. The steel descends with a deafening sound, sealing an unforgivable betrayal committed by those to whom he dedicated every drop of his blood. But the end is merely the prelude to a vengeance that will transcend time, as the white-haired patriarch watches the spectacle unfold. The image of an infernal beast marks his last conscious breath, and blood overflows, filling the void of a warrior's death. With that, everything goes dark, but fate decides the Hound still has teeth to sink into the throats of his former masters. Something extraordinary happens. The silence of death is suddenly torn by a sharp cry, and the warmth of clean sheets in a room that smells like a nursery. Vakir awakens and confusion overtakes his senses as he sees rows of cribs occupied by small defenseless and noisy creatures. His red eyes gleam with an ancestral consciousness no child should possess. He is back at the very beginning. The imposing Baskerville Castle rises against the night sky, the same golden prison where his first life of suffering began. Iron cribs line the cold hall where babies are treated as mere genetic experiments to maintain the supremacy of the bloodline. Hugo Le Baskerville walks through the corridor like an apathetic god, judging the usefulness of each child with a single look laden with disdain. He stops before the wet nurses, his voice like a sharp blade as he proclaims he sees no special talent there. With a spine-chilling disdain, the patriarch declares that this time only trash has gathered in the nursery and turns his back. However, something catches his attention, and he stops abruptly, his predator's eyes focusing on a specific spot in the room's darkness. Hugo's gaze pierces the small Vakir, feeling a strange pressure emanating from a being that should be nothing but fragile flesh. Without showing emotion, he orders the guards to take all the babies to the dangerous Cradle of Swords the next day for the test. The red-eyed infant observes his father's every move, hatred silently simmering beneath his childlike skin as he plans the future. The man who ordered his execution is mere inches away, but Vakir knows that now he must be patient and bide his time. He understands that the game of life has begun anew, and the pieces are now being moved by a master who knows the ending. In his past life, Vakir was molded to be the ultimate weapon of the Baskervilles, a bastard trained in the shadows for assassinations and infiltrations. He lived surrounded by corpses and mountains of bones, doing the dirty work that the aristocracy refused to touch with their hands. The white-haired butler was one of the few who saw his usefulness, but even he knew that old hounds are always sacrificed. His hand gripped the sword with a devotion bordering on madness, desperately seeking recognition that would never come from those who despised him. Vakir's loyalty was his greatest weakness in the past, transforming him into a disposable tool after decades of faithful service and bloody battles. His fist clenches at the memory of injustice, swearing that in this life he will be the one holding the leash and the blade. He looks at the neighboring infant with calculating coldness, aware that the competition within this clan begins even before weaning. The tiny protagonist analyzes his current physical limitations, frustrated at being trapped in a body that can barely support its own weight. Rows of swords thrust into the ground represent the family's iron and blood philosophy, a constant reminder that only the strong survive. Vakir accepts the challenge and begins to prepare his mind for the first great ordeal that will define his status within that cruel hierarchy. The legendary Styx River is the ultimate destination for this trial, a mystical torrent that promises to transform the children's skin into pure steel. The bearded elder observes the flow of the shadowy waters, knowing that many will not return from those depths that demand a sacrifice of pain. A small body is seen fallen on the ground, a brutal reminder that failure among the Baskervilles is punished with eternal oblivion. Young Vakir's face contorts with determination, his eyes reflecting the water's surface that will soon test his unwavering will. Before Hugo and the bespectacled butler, the babies are prepared for the ritual, a scene that would be a crime anywhere else. The group of men observes with cold expectation, interested only in discovering if any of these infants possess the spark of a genius. Vakir is thrown into the icy waters, and darkness instantly swallows him, but he doesn't fight the current, he embraces it. Submerged, he feels the river's magic trying to tear his flesh, a hardening process that would make an adult man cry out in pain. He keeps his mouth shut and his mind focused, using breathing techniques from his past life to extract every drop of benefit. On the surface, time passes and the adults begin to fret, for the normal submersion time has long been surpassed. The red-eyed boy floats in the liquid abyss, allowing the Styx' essence to penetrate his bones and strengthen his marrow. Butler Barrymore adjusts his glasses, surprised by the lack of movement on the surface, while Hugo watches with an interest bordering on suspicion. The minutes drag on and the tension in the air becomes almost suffocating, with everyone expecting the baby to emerge dead at any moment. But Vikir decides to go further, diving deeper to monopolize the river's blessing for as long as his infant body can endure. The water infiltrates every latent cut and scar of his soul, sealing his destiny as an indestructible and powerful biological armor. He endures the agony, laughing internally, remembering how in his previous life he was prevented from receiving this full power by his siblings. Suddenly, he coughs and releases the last air bubbles, but his heart continues to beat with a rhythmic, almost supernatural strength. The little master's face glows under the water, an image of determination that would terrify anyone who could witness that bizarre scene. Bubbles rise to the surface like pearls of a one gamble, marking the absolute record that has just been broken by a newborn. A hand plunges into the torrent and grabs Vikir's foot, pulling him out before the river claims him forever. Hugo holds his son by the heels and stares at the small being who seems more alive now than when he entered those cursed waters. The patriarch lets out a short, dry laugh, surprised to see that the boy not only survived, but seems to have drunk the river itself. He hands the infant to the butler, commenting with a sinister smile that perhaps a greedy son has finally been born into his lineage. Vikir's gaze locks with his father's, and the electricity of hatred is almost palpable, a premonition that the master will raise his own executioner. The young master is taken back, but his mind is already working on the next step, seizing every millisecond to strengthen his new foundation. He knows the road ahead is long, but the iron foundation he built today will be the ruin of the Baskervilles. Shadows of black wolves seem to follow him through the corridors, as if death itself were curious about this new predator that has just awakened. The wolf roars in his mind, demanding blood and justice, and Vikir promises that he will leave no debt unpaid on this journey. A dark silhouette watches the nursery from afar, sensing that something has shifted in the natural order of things within that stone fortress. Destiny was rewritten the moment Vikir first opened his eyes, and the world will soon feel the tremor of his steps. Night falls over the estate and silence is absolute, but danger never sleeps where power is the only currency. A malevolent presence infiltrates the nursery, moving with the subtlety of a wraith seeking to silence a growing threat. Vikir senses the shift in the air even before any sound is heard. His hunting dog instincts have never abandoned him. He opens his red eyes and focuses on the shadow cast over his crib, keeping his breathing calm so as not to alert the intruder. Hidden enemies try to act quickly, knowing that the prodigy who survived the river cannot be allowed to grow and strengthen. The nursery becomes the stage for a cowardly assassination attempt, where the target is an infant who has already lived 1,000 battles. A gloved hand places a small glass box under Vikir's sheets, acting under the orders of one of the house's madames. The boy observes the box with profound disdain, immediately recognizing the lethal content sent to end his life. He knows it's no gift. It's a death verdict sent by those who fear losing their privileged position in the family. The box opens with a subtle click, and a mist of danger begins to escape, revealing the terror that dwells within. A mamba snake emerges from the darkness, hissing with the promise of venom that paralyzes the heart in a few agonizing seconds. But it's not just one, it's two bloody mambas, creatures as rare as they are lethal, ready to sink their fangs into soft flesh. Vikir doesn't flinch an inch. He waits for the exact moment the serpent prepares to strike, ready to act with surgical precision. The infant lunges with a speed that defies biology, his tiny hands moving like the blades of a master swordsman in full combat. He seizes the viper's necks before they can react, suffocating their deadly hiss with a grip that emanates a dark power. The venom drips uselessly from their scales as Vikir smashes the creature's heads against the crib's wood with brutal force. He holds the dying serpent's gaze with cold satisfaction, showing that not even the strongest venom can halt his eternal vengeance. The crib is now stained with black blood, an altar of violence where innocence was sacrificed for ruthless survival. 3 servants enter the room and freeze, horrified to find the scene of carnage that unfolded while they were absent for a moment. Vikir closes his eyes and feigns peaceful sleep beside the mutilated corpses, leaving the adults terrified and without any logical explanation. Years pass, and the child grows under the watchful and suspicious gaze of the entire mansion, becoming a legend whispered through its corridors. The red-eyed youth now displays a warrior's stance, his movements fluid, and charged with an almost imperceptible, murderous intent. He became the Academy's most brilliant and silent student, one who observes everything and reveals nothing of his true plans. In the classroom, the professor attempts to teach the levels of swordsmanship to the new masters, unaware that a true master sits among them. The instructor gestures before the blackboard, explaining that mana is the foundation of all power that defines a true Baskerville. A sword gleams with a liquid aura, representing the level of a graduator, the cherished dream of all the youths present. But when the aura becomes solid and malleable, the swordmaster level is achieved, a pinnacle that few humans can ever touch. The students exclaim in wonder, wishing to one day reach such glory, but Vikir remains silent, his mind already far beyond this. He knows that Hugo is already a master at this point in history, which makes his assassination mission an almost impossible task. The professor notices Vikir's distraction and adjusts his glasses, commenting that the young master seems to be lost in deep thought again. Vikir focuses on the present, aware that he needs to recover his original power before the coming-of-age ceremony, which rapidly approaches on the calendar. He calculates how many years of intense training will be necessary to finally gain the strength to tear off his own father's head. Just then, 3 blonde youths enter the room with sneering smiles, exuding the typical arrogance of those born into pure golden cradles. One of them rudely shoves Vikir, wanting to test the patience of the boy everyone says is a special genius of the new talented generation. They surround him like hyenas, mocking his bastard status and challenging him to prove that the rumors of his strength are real. The group's leader approaches with a look of contempt, spitting venomous words as he tries to intimidate the protagonist, who remains motionless and calm. Vikir recognizes them immediately. They are the triplets known as Hugo's Trident, the same ones who cruelly tormented him in his past life. They laugh and boast about being a year older and stronger, completely oblivious to the monster they have just cornered. The circle closes, and the atmosphere in the training room grows heavy, with other students retreating to avoid being caught in the conflict. Suddenly, one of the blondes pulls out a training knife, but with a sharpened tip, breaking the sacred safety rules of the family academy. He presses the blade against Vikir's neck, demanding to know if the legend of the Styx River's steel body is absolute truth. The brothers egg him on to cut, laughing at the dangerous situation, while Vikir merely observes the blade with profound, almost insulting boredom. The aggressor asks if he'll die if stabbed, his voice laden with a childish cruelty that knows no bounds or basic empathy. Vikir thinks about how cruel children can be, but decides it might be time to play a little with his new prey. He remains calm as the bully's hand trembles, the tension escalating until the first sudden move is finally made by them. The blonde decides the humiliation will be greater if he forces him to beg, and the brothers prepare to laugh at his weakness. But in a minute, everything changes. The air in the room seems to be sucked into a vacuum of power emanating directly from the protagonist. Vikir moves with a speed that the children's eyes cannot follow, instantly shattering the distance and space between them. 3 minutes later, the triplets' arrogance begins to give way to an uncomfortable doubt and a fear born in their gut. A hand closes over the wrist of the boy holding the knife, and the sound of bones grinding under pressure echoes. 10 minutes later, the scene is one of total destruction. Hugo's trident has been ripped apart by a boy a year younger than them. Vikir keeps his gaze fixed on the group's leader, his face splattered with the blood of those who dared to challenge his iron patience. The triplets lie fallen, their faces distorted by terror and the pain of blows delivered with surgical precision and lethal intent. They beg him to stop, but the Hound knows no mercy when disrespect is the crime committed. Vikir grabs one of them by the hair and forces him to look at the blade now in his hands, completely reversing their roles. The gleam of the knife reflects the terror in the blonde eyes, as the protagonist asks if he still wants to know if metal can harm him. With a swift movement, he bites the aggressor's finger, tearing off a piece of flesh like a wild beast that has just tasted its prey. The scream that escapes the young master's throat is pure agony, while Vikir spits the blood on the ground with utter contempt. He asks if he didn't say he'd eat his own hand if he lost, his voice calm and icy as a winter tomb. The Trident's leader stutters, trying to pull back, but Vikir holds him trapped in a death grip that allows no escape. The protagonist smiles, a smile that promises more pain if the fun ends too soon for his refined taste for revenge. He declares that they've forgotten what it means to be a Baskerville, where power and talent overcome any barrier of age or status. The other two brothers try to intervene, but a single glance from Vikir is enough to make them freeze in place, trembling like leaves in the wind. The wounded aggressor tries to attack again in an act of blind despair, but Vikir dodges and lands a monstrous punch to his stomach. The blonde falls to the ground, spitting more blood, while the other brothers shout Hybero's name in a chorus of absolute despair and helplessness. They realize too late that the one they called trash is in fact the most dangerous predator to have ever set foot on those sacred lands. Vikir stands up and wipes the blood from the corner of his mouth, observing the 3 pieces of human trash now crawling at his feet. He warns that if they tell anyone about this, he will return to finish what he started with each of them individually and slowly. Psychological fear is visible on their faces. They will never be the same after having their minds broken by that demon child. He lets the knife fall beside them, a symbol of his total and overwhelming victory over the cousins who once intimidated him so much. Walks towards the exit, his silhouette casting a long, ominous shadow that seems to swallow the entire torchlit corridor. The triplets remain on the floor, crying and trying to staunch the blood from their physical and mental wounds that will never truly heal. Butler Barrymore observes the scene from a safe distance, his eyes gleaming behind his spectacles at the birth of a monster. He knows that the report he will deliver to Hugo today will change the course of the entire Baskerville family succession forever. Vikir enters his room and looks in the mirror, seeing a reflection of an 8-year-old boy with the soul of an executioner. He knows the patriarch will be pleased with the results, for to Hugo, cruelty is merely a sign of strength and potential. The plan is proceeding perfectly, and the seeds of the Baskervilles' total destruction have been sown with the blood of their own elite members. Elsewhere in the castle, Hugo Le Baskerville receives the butler in his private study, exuding an aura of authority that suffocates the environment. The patriarch listens intently about the fight and how Vikir neutralized the trident with an efficiency bordering on absolute combat perfection. He asks if there were any deaths, and Barrymore replies no, but that the physical and psychological damage is significant and likely permanent. Hugo lets out a sigh that sounds like a growl of satisfaction, finding it fascinating that his youngest son has surpassed expectations so early. He orders Vikir to be brought before him immediately, wanting to see with his own eyes the glint of that raw, deadly diamond. The mansion's luxurious corridor seems to bow before the boy's passage, as if the very walls recognize their new and terrible lord. Vikir stops before the large oak door, taking a deep breath and adjusting his mask of an innocent child before entering the beast's lair. Hugo sits in his armchair, hands clasped and gaze fixed on the door, awaiting the encounter that will define their next steps. The butler announces the entrance of Vikir van Baskerville, and the boy walks with a confidence that shocks even the most experienced guards. The patriarch smiles, a rare and dangerous gesture, commenting that the boy has grown much since he last saw him at the Styx River. Vikir greets him with a perfect bow, keeping his head low to hide the murderous glint threatening to spill from his red irises. Hugo asks what he wants in return for his exceptional performance, and Vikir replies with a voice that sounds both sweet and deadly. He claims he only wants to be the most loyal hound the family has ever had, using the same words that previously led him to his death. But this time, as the patriarch laughs confidently, Vikir knows the dog is ready to bite the hand that feeds it and destroy everything. The patriarch gets straight to the point and mentions the trident the triplets Vikir neutralized with a brutality that shocked the entire Baskerville lineage. Hugo doesn't speak of flesh wounds, but rather the complete destruction of those boys' spirits, something Barrymore witnessed firsthand. The triplets, once proud, are now broken shadows who can't even look at each other, their legendary coordination turned to dust. Vikir merely smiles, the kind of calm smile you'd see on a saint, but one that hides the abyss of a demon. Hugo questions if the boy feels not a shred of guilt for turning his own brothers into utterly useless ragdolls. But Vikir's answer cuts the air like a guillotine. How could the strongest be wrong? Strength is the only truth. Hugo reports that the brothers came before him, claiming they would graciously forgive him, testing the reaction of the little monster before him. Vikir's smile widens, laden with a silent mockery for those who dare speak of forgiveness without having the necessary power. A memory surfaces, the daughter of a ruined family who became a nun only to offer forgiveness at the feet of the executioner Hugo. For the Baskervilles, forgiveness is nothing but a pathetic lie invented by the weak who lack the power to seek revenge. Hugo's gaze ignites with a maniacal gleam as he recognizes the same philosophy of iron and fire in his youngest son. Weakness is the only unforgivable sin in this world, and Hugo laughs because Vikir seems to have understood this before everyone else. Satisfied, the patriarch orders Barrymore to reward the boy, allowing him to take any snack he desires from the food pantry. Vikir acts like a curious child for a second, his red eyes gleaming as he accepts the prize with a perfect bow. He asks for chocolate, a simple request that makes Hugo laugh, thinking he finally found a trace of childhood in that dark boy. The boy withdraws from the hall, walking under the watchful eye of the butler, as the plan for revenge takes new shape in his mind. Hugo gives a final warning before the door closes, calling him son for the first time, an honor stained with the blood of others. Barrymore guides him through the cold corridors of the mansion, still processing how an 8-year-old child could exude so much authority and danger. Hugo's face remains etched in Vikir's mind, a beast he needs to overcome if he wants to destroy this clan entirely. The boy maintains the facade, but every step he takes is the calculation of a predator who knows exactly where he's going now. They arrive at the family's vast provisions warehouse, a place that holds culinary treasures many nobles would never dream of seeing. Barrymore presents the most expensive chocolates, obtained with great difficulty from the Morg clan, known for being the best gourmands in the entire kingdom. But Vikir ignores the processed sweets, his eyes scanning the shelves for something much more specific and infinitely more lethal. The cooks watch with strangeness as the little master discards the fine delicacies, searching for something raw and without any apparent refinement. He points to a sack in the back and demands the pure cacao beans, those with an aroma so strong it suffocates. Barrymore is confused, as those beans are too bitter for a child's palate, being used only as a base for concentrates. Vikir insists, stating he needs the beans that exude the richest aroma, hiding that they are known as blood beans. The boy knows that the purity of these beans is what makes them dangerous, a chemical weapon disguised as food for the unsuspecting. Barrymore watches the master take the sack, thinking that perhaps the boy just has a peculiar and bitter taste like his own soul. The butler adjusts his glasses, intrigued by Vikir's cleverness in finding a way to have infinite chocolate within the clan's restrictions. In the back of the warehouse, the boy smiles at the sack, feeling the weight of the tool that will ensure his survival in the upcoming test. He refuses to have the beans processed by the chefs, deciding to take everything as is to his room, under everyone's perplexed gaze. With the sack on his shoulders, he walks back. Every bean inside represents certain death for any creature of canine lineage. At this, the scene shifts to the frozen mountains, the territory where wolf pups are tested until only the cruelest survive. Baskerville's education is a true meat grinder, forcing children to climb steep peaks as soon as they learn to take their first steps. To harden their spirits, they are forced to sleep embraced by monster corpses, smelling death from the tenderest age. Now, at 8 years old, Vikir and his peers face the intermediate assessment, the rite of passage that separates predators from prey. At the foot of Mount Le Rouge et Le Noir, a group of young candidates gathers under the supervision of a ruthless instructor. Pavlov Van Baskerville introduces himself, a man whose aura exudes the danger of a veteran shadowhound from hundreds of battles. He explains the rules of this deadly game: survive for an entire month in an ecosystem infested with creatures that crave flesh. Points are distributed for survival, but true prestige comes from hunting large and strong monsters, proving the worth of Baskerville blood. Pavlov shows the badge each must carry, a target on their back that can earn extra points for anyone who dares to steal it. The children listen attentively, knowing that any mistake there will not only result in a low grade, but in a painful and lonely death. A blue-haired boy observes the others with disdain, feeling superior due to his direct lineage, while the others tremble in pure dread. He whispers to his companions that individual survival is impossible, trying to form an alliance to dominate the territory of the icy mountain. The focus returns to a curly-haired student who seems to be the target of the malicious conversations of the group of blonde students. But he ignores the provocations, remaining calm as Pavlov continues to describe the dangers of restricted areas where no one should dare enter. The blonde students surround him, laughing and calling him trash, unaware that the true monster is just waiting for the right moment. Pavlov interrupts the clamor with an icy gaze, reminding everyone that arrogance is the first step towards a swordsman's grave. The mountain map is projected, showing subjugated areas and the unknown territory where death lurks in every shadow of the dry trees. The instructor emphasizes that the shadow hounds will be hidden in the forest, evaluating every move and every drop of blood spilled by the candidates. One of the students whispers about Vickers' deeds, mentioning his record time in the Styx River and the assassination of the serpents in the cradle. The legend of the red-eyed boy has already spread, generating both fear and envy among those who consider themselves the true heirs. The group of blondes laughs, doubting that a boy who spent 7 minutes in the river can survive the real fury of a monster. Vikir remains silent, his mind processing the map and locating the strategic points he knows from his past life as a scout. He knows that the Le Rouge et Le Noir mountain holds secrets that not even Pavlov and the Shadowhounds have yet discovered. Meanwhile, the boy in blue flees from 3 giant wolves, proving that theoretical training is useless against real fangs. Pavlov watches from afar, disappointed with the performance of those who should be the elite but who now run like frightened rats. A hooded figure emerges from the trees, a silent observer whose sole function is to report the failure or success of the young masters. The observer focuses on Vikir, curious to see if the stories about the prodigy genius are real or just rumors inflated by the mansion. The boy begins to move, but instead of rushing into combat, he calmly walks towards an area of soft ground. The sun begins to set, and the mountain becomes a labyrinth of shadows and howls that chill anyone to the bone. Vikir ignores the imminent danger and begins to dig a hole, acting so bizarrely that the observer begins to doubt everything. He seems to be building a makeshift shelter, something a coward would do to hide during the entire month of the special evaluation. The observer whispers to himself that perhaps the Baskerville genius is just a clever boy who knows how to hide. That said, he decides to observe a little longer, hoping Vikir will show some sword technique, but the boy remains focused on domestic tasks. While the other students fight for their lives against wild beasts, Vikir is busy gathering dry branches to make a small bonfire. Elsewhere, swords clash and blood splatters on the snow, the survival test becoming a true extermination camp. A giant bear attacks the group of blondes, who now scream for help as their defenses crumble before the brute force of nature. Vikir, on the other hand, finishes his hole and lies down, looking at the starry sky with a tranquility that borders on total insanity. The hooded observer grinds his teeth, feeling he's wasting his time monitoring a boy who has no intention of fighting. He wonders if Hugo really saw something in this boy, or if it was just an illusion caused by the Styx River ritual. Frustrated, the shadow figure decides to withdraw to look for candidates who are truly demonstrating combat skills worthy of the Baskerville name. As soon as the observer's presence disappears, Vikir's gaze changes instantly. The child's glow vanishes and the executioner fully awakens. He knows that the observation period is over, and that he can now act without revealing the secret techniques he knows prematurely. The boy stands up, brushing dust from his clothes, and draws a small knife that gleams under the moonlight with a bloodthirsty reflection. He wasn't hiding, he was just waiting for the audience to disappear so the real hunt could begin without inconvenient witnesses. Vikir walks towards the heart of the restricted area, the place where rank B and A monsters inhabit in the depths of the forest. He knows the smell of fear and the smell of prey, and something big is approaching, something that makes the ground tremble slightly. In the darkness, 2 flaming eyes open, revealing the presence of a hellhound, a beast that swallowed the flames of hell itself. The monster roars, flames dancing on its black body as it glares at the small human who dared to invade its forbidden territory. Vikir doesn't back down. Instead, he smiles and takes one of the blood beans from his pocket, twirling it between his fingers with skill. The hellhound charges in a straight line like all canines who rely solely on their speed and brute force to crush opponents. The monster opens its jaws, revealing rows of sharp teeth that can grind bones as if they were made of dry paper. Vikir calculates the trajectory perfectly, moving with an economy of motion that only a war veteran would possess in his prime. He dodges the attack by mere millimeters, feeling the heat of the beast's flames lick his skin as the blood bean flies through the air. It turns out that chocolate is a deadly poison for canines, and when concentrated at this level, a single seed can paralyze a monster's heart. The hellhound swallows the bean mid-leap, thinking it has bitten into a piece of the boy's flesh it so desperately wants to devour. Almost instantly, the creature begins to choke, the ultra-concentrated theobromine poison attacking its central nervous system with unprecedented violence. Vikir watches the beast collapse, coughing up a thick green slime as its flaming body begins to lose its glow and strength. He calmly explains to the dying monster that chocolate is the greatest weakness of its species, a lesson he learned in blood. The boy approaches with his short sword, aiming at the exact spot where the ribs don't protect the vital organs of the fallen creature. The hellhound attempts one last growl, but its strength abandons it as the poison finishes destroying its heart in silent agony. With a dry, precise blow, Vikir pierces the beast's kidney, finishing the kill with the efficiency of an elite professional executioner. The monster's black blood drips from the blade, and a bluish aura begins to envelop the boy's body, signaling the absorption of energy. Vikir feels karma flowing into him, strengthening his muscles and expanding his mana channels with impressive speed. He notes that the short sword feels lighter now, a clear sign that his body is evolving to reach the level of his past life. The boy cleans the blade and wonders what Hugo's face will look like when he brings back the head of a rank B+ monster. He has already decided what reward he will ask for, something whose value no one in this era understands, a secret locked in chains of blood and oblivion. Vikir prepares to cut off the hellhound's head when suddenly a sharp sound of something approaching cuts through the deadly silence of the forest. He quickly turns, his red eyes catching the movement of other shadows emerging from the dense, chilling darkness around him. Other smaller hellhounds appear, drawn by the scent of blood and the cries of pain from their leader, who now lies dead on the ground. The boy shows no fear. He merely laments that he'll have to spend a few more bloody grains to clear out that hunting area. With that, he tosses more seeds into the air, and the scene becomes a feast of death as the beasts leap towards their own inevitable demise. Vikir dances among the falling bodies, his sword technique merging with the poison to create a symphony of absolute silent destruction. When the last hellhound stops struggling, the boy sighs, feeling the fatigue of an 8-year-old body trying to contain a colossal soul. He sits near the campfire he made earlier, the glow of the flames reflecting in his eyes that never flinch before death. Silence returns to Mount La Rouge et Le Noir, but it's a heavy silence, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. Vikir notices something strange about the bodies of the smaller monsters. They didn't just come for revenge, they seem to be fleeing something larger. He looks into the depths of the restricted area, beyond the territory where shadow hounds would dare to patrol at night. A triple roar echoes, a sound that doesn't belong to this world, making the surrounding trees tremble and dry leaves fall. Vikir immediately recognizes that sound. It's the breath of hell, the guardian of souls that should never have returned from the abyss. A massive silhouette merges between the charged trunks, 3 enormous heads drooling a purple energy that corrodes the soft ground beneath their steps. It's a Cerberus, the A+ rank guardian monster, an abomination that should only inhabit the deepest, most inaccessible mountain ranges. The boy feels a drop of cold sweat trickle down his face, realizing his situation has just become exponentially more dangerous. The Cerberus roars again, its 6 eye sockets glowing with an ancient hatred against anything possessing a functional heartbeat. Vikir notes that the monster is covered in wounds and barbaric arrows, suggesting it was hunted by a neighboring tribe and is enraged. If the beast ended up on the mountain's first level, it's because it was driven from its original habitat by something even more terrible and powerful. The boy sees an impossible opportunity in this. If he can kill an A+ rank Cerberus, his ascent in the clan will be unstoppable and immediate. He draws his short sword again, but this time his hand trembles slightly under the suffocating weight of the aura emanating from that creature. Vikir remembers his past life, where he needed an entire elite squad to bring down such a beast at 18 years old. Now he is just an 8-year-old boy with a training sword and a few poisoned cocoa beans against the watchdog. The Cerberus attacks with a speed that defies the laws of physics for a creature of its colossal size and dense muscle mass. Vikir leaps aside, but the air displacement caused by the blow throws him against a nearby tree trunk with force. He coughs blood, feeling his ribs protest as the monster prepares for a second devastating attack that could be his end. But fate has crueler plans, and from the shadows emerges the beast's central head, exhaling the very putrid breath of the underworld. Vikir feels the weight of death staring him down, but upon noticing the arrows in the beast's body, his strategist's brain ignites. He decides to exploit the monster's weakness, focusing on the wounds already opened by the barbarians to deliver a blow that bypasses external defenses. The Cerberus roars, a sound that shatters anyone's sanity, but Vikir sees only a golden opportunity bathed in pure blood. He charges forward like a blue blur, using the agility of his small body to slide beneath the furious beast's front paws. Memories of barbarian tribes crossing the border surface, suggesting they were the ones who left the beast in this deplorable state of constant pain. Vicar plunges his sword into an open wound, feeling the monster's hot blood burn his skin as he twists the blade. The Cerberus howls in pain and twists its body, trying to crush the small nuisance that dares to challenge the mountain's power hierarchy. The boy is thrown far away again, but he lands on his feet, his red eyes glowing with a thirst for blood that rivals the beast's. He knows he cannot win a battle of attrition, so every move must be lethal and aimed at the monster's complete collapse. Another leap, another thrust. The surrounding snow is now stained a deep red and the air smells of iron and imminent death. Vikir refined his swordsmanship during years of war against demons, and now he applies every ounce of that knowledge to this unequal and brutal combat. He realizes the Cerberus is slowing down, the fatigue from previous battles finally weighing on its muscles, which now visibly tremble. But the monster has one last trump card. Its three heads can attack simultaneously, covering all the blind spots the boy tries to use for attack. The beast's central gaze locks onto Vikir, and for a moment it seems the creature's own malicious intelligence is mocking his audacity. The boy prepares for the final blow, gathering all the mana he absorbed from the Hellhounds to imbue his small training blade. The Cerberus opens all three mouths at once, preparing a breath of purple flames that will incinerate everything within a 10-meter radius. It's now or never. Vikir explodes toward the beast, ignoring the heat that already begins to scorch his clothes and his own hair. He dives toward the monster, his sword gleaming with an intensity that cuts through the night's darkness like a cursed ray of hope. However, in a moment of distraction caused by extreme fatigue, Vikir lowers his guard for just 1/100th of a second, which could be fatal. The Cerberus's claws cut through the air, a counterattack the boy didn't expect from a creature so weakened by its wounds. The impact is brutal, and the silence that follows is only filled by the sound of flesh being torn and a muffled cry of pain. Vikir flies backward, colliding with a rock as blood gushes from his left arm in a cascade that darkens the frozen ground. The scene is a nightmare, with the boy fallen and the three-headed monster approaching for the definitive coup de grace. Vikir feels the cold grip of death creep up his legs, but his burning will to destroy the Baskervilles keeps him conscious, fueled by an inferno of hatred. He stares into the Cerberus's jaws, and even as he bleeds, a smirk of pure mockery twists his lips as he clutches something the beast never saw. The boy tastes the metallic tang of blood in his mouth, realizing he was struck full force by the beast's devastating attack. The monster snarls, a sound that vibrates through Vikir's very bones, preparing to finish off the one who dared challenge its absolute sovereignty. The ground explodes into shards of rock and snow as this beast charges with a speed that defies human eyes. Vikir appears to the side in a desperate blur, feeling the searing heat of the purple flames scorch his cadet uniform. He glances at his own arm, and the sight is pure horror. The flesh is torn, revealing the cruel damage of the claws. But the Cerberus pauses, its three heads swaying as if something invisible and relentless is draining its very vitality. The beast's central gaze glows with blind fury, unable to accept that such a small human is still standing. Vikir takes a deep breath, ignoring the excruciating pain as he calculates his next, and perhaps final, move on this death-strewn board. He knows that the effects of the Styx River and the wounds inflicted by the barbarians are finally taking their toll on the rank A+ creature. The boy focuses his vision on an iron fence in the distance, the boundary of the restricted zone he planned to use as his final stage. With a sudden burst, Vikir darts towards the border, luring the monster out of its comfort and safety zone. The Cerberus howls, a sound that tears through the night, pursuing its prey with the hatred of a humiliated predator. If I reach the places I prepared, victory will be mine, the young Baskerville thinks as cold sweat trickles down his face. The impact of the chase makes the surrounding trees tremble, as if nature itself is terrified by the ensuing confrontation. Vikir runs with every fiber of his being, his injured arm swinging uselessly, but his mind focused on the objective that will guarantee his survival. The beast is right behind him, its jaws snapping mere inches from his back, exhaling the putrid stench of rotten flesh and dark magic. He firmly plants his feet on the icy ground, feeling the necessary traction for the final leap that will decide the fate of this bloody hunt. As he crosses the boundary, Vikir spins his body in the air, his red eyes blazing with the knowledge of decades of war and suffering. He faces the triple visage of death, and for a brief instant, silence dominates the battlefield before the final explosion. The monster's paws collide with the rocks, but the terrain here was prepared to be the grave of any beast that approaches. The Cerberus lunges for the killing blow, but it doesn't realize it has fallen exactly where the boy wanted it to be. Vikir falls onto his back, exhaustion finally taking its toll, but a triumphant smile emerges amidst his bloodied face. He looks up and sees the beast hovering over him, unaware that the poison already flows silently through its monstrous veins. The monster tries to spread its wings and roar its dominance, but its body seizes, muscles refusing to obey the beast's command. Vikir watches the giant's agony, knowing that the hidden wooden spears did their work with surgical and lethal precision. The Cerberus begins to collapse, black blood gushing from its open wounds as life drains away through the boy's fingers. Each of the beast's heads stares at Vikir with a mixture of dread and incomprehension, unable to understand how they were defeated by a child. Silence finally returns to the mountain, broken only by the heavy thud of the monster falling like a sack of stones to the ground. Vikir slowly rises, wiping blood from his face as he contemplates the creature's body, shocking everyone with its sheer size. But something catches his attention in the depths of the darkness. A pair of glowing eyes observes the scene, predatory and calm. The shadowy creature approaches, revealing itself as a denizen of darkness that had awaited the opportune moment to collect the remnants of the battle. Vikir does not retreat. He knows that on this mountain, weakness is an invitation to death, and he has no intention of being the next meal. He faces the new threat, his hands searching for any makeshift weapon that remained after the brutal confrontation with the Cerberus. The shadow creature snarls, but hesitates upon seeing the boy's icy gaze, a look that carries the weight of 1,000 past executions. Vikir understands that the danger is not yet over and that the true reward of this hunt is hidden just ahead of him. With a swift movement, he dispatches the smaller threat, demonstrating that, even wounded, he is the most dangerous predator in those icy mountains. The creature's body falls lifeless, serving only as a warning to any other monster that dares approach the conquered territory. Vikir now focuses on the wooden spear that was the key to his victory, admiring the simplicity of a weapon so effective against giants. The Cerberus's blood stains the wood, creating a bizarre contrast with the purity of the snow that begins to fall on the spot. He recalls lessons from his previous life when he learned about the extreme toxicity of certain natural elements found in enemy territory. The boy knows that cunning is his greatest ally against the brute force of the Baskervilles and the monsters they so fear to face. The Cerberus's corpse begins to emanate residual energy, mana dispersing into the cold air as the cycle of life concludes. Vikir ignores his exhaustion and begins to walk, his heavy footsteps marking the beginning of a new phase in his journey of vengeance. In the distance, unknown figures observe the destruction, whispering about the prodigy who just accomplished the impossible before their eyes. But the boy doesn't care about others' opinions. He has a destiny to fulfill, and nothing will stop him from reaching the top. His feet lead him to the entrance of a hidden cave, the place the Cerberus guarded with such zeal and deadly ferocity. The air escaping the opening is warm and smells of ancient minerals, indicating that something of inestimable value rests within its depths. Vikir steps into the darkness, his silhouette vanishing among the stone walls as he advances into the unknown with absolute confidence. The echo of his footsteps resonates through the cave, a rhythmic sound that seems to count down the seconds to a discovery that will change everything. He senses the presence of dense mana, the kind of energy that only exists in places untouched by time and human greed. The boy pauses for a moment, closing his eyes to attune his senses to the vibrations emanating from the mountain's heart. He knows he's about to find something that the Baskerville family would take decades to uncover if he weren't here right now. The light begins to shift, reddish hues reflecting on the damp cave walls, revealing veins of ruby that glow like fresh blood. Further ahead, he spots figures that shouldn't be there, remains of explorers who failed in their quest for absolute power. Vikir focuses his gaze on a giant red gem resting on a pedestal, the center of all energy in this sacred place. The stone pulses with a hypnotic light, inviting the boy to touch it and claim the power residing within its burning core. He extends his hand, feeling the heat emanating from the gem, a sensation that burns through the cold, dominating his injured body. Upon touching the stone, a vision flashes through his mind, revealing ancient secrets about the Baskerville lineage and the demons they once faced. Beside a shadowy pedestal, he finds a sitting skeleton, its posture suggesting someone who accepted death after a long and hopeless struggle. Vikir examines the remains, realizing that this man was an elite warrior, someone who sought the same power he now pursued. The skull seems to gaze directly at him, a silent reminder that the path of power is paved with the bones of the weak. Clutched in the skeleton's hands is a piece of yellowed paper, a final letter written with the last breath of a tormented soul. Vikir reads the words etched in dried blood, feeling the pain and regret the author left behind as a heavy legacy. The letter speaks of two brothers, Cain and Abel, who entered this dungeon together but allowed greed to destroy their fraternal bond forever. They found the gem, but the final enigma demanded a sacrifice neither was willing to accept fairly, culminating in tragedy. The boy understands the fury that led to the tragedy. The enigma stated that upon entering there were two but to leave, only one could bear the burden of power. He looks at the gem again, realizing that the final test wasn't one of brute strength, but of discernment and control over one's own desires. The ancient writing glows with a pink hue, revealing the solution the brothers failed to see amidst their blind rage. The vision of the brothers fighting in silhouette resonates in Vikir's mind, a grim warning that the Baskerville lineage has always been cursed by internal conflict. The enigma was simple and brutal. The shadow is the second being that enters with you, and to leave, you must abandon the darkness that pursues you. The brothers drew their swords, transforming the treasure trove into a slaughterhouse where the blood of the same family was mercilessly spilled. They attacked each other mercilessly, forgetting that the true enemy wasn't their brother, but the very weakness consuming them from within. The sound of clashing metal echoes from the past, a symphony of betrayal that Vikir knows all too well from his own life, both present and past. Cain stabbed Abel, believing his brother's death would grant him the right to possess the Ruby Dungeon's ultimate secret. Abel's scream of agony still seems to vibrate within the cave walls, an indelible mark of a cruelty that shocks even the coldest of men. But Cain realized too late that the treasure wasn't for the survivor of fratricide, but for the one who understood unity, duality. He tried to walk towards the light at the cave's exit, but the weight of guilt and the unresolved enigma sealed his fate right there. He died alone, slumped against the wall, staring at the treasure he could never touch and the brother he should never have killed. Vikir sighs, feeling a deep contempt for those who allow emotions to cloud their tactical vision and greater objectives. He focuses on the gem again, knowing he is different. He has no brother to betray, nor a shadow he cannot control. Cain's skeletons seems like mere dust before Vikir's determination, as he prepares to claim what is rightfully his. He glances at the skull one last time, a cold farewell to a man who was utterly despicable to his own blood and paid the price. Dust rises as Vikir moves, the air in the chamber growing heavy with the expectation that the enigma will finally be solved. The boy dons his determination like armor, his red eyes fixed on the relic that promises to change the course of his history. The ruby crystal vibrates, sensing the presence of a Baskerville who carries neither the hesitation nor the madness that destroyed others before him. Vikir understands now. The enigma wasn't about physical sacrifice, but about the duality between man and his own predatory shadow. He turns his back on the past, focusing on the future, where he will be the sole one to dictate the rules of this new life he has been granted. Applying the correct logic, the crystal begins to crack, the red gem shattering to reveal what had been hidden for centuries within. Vikir watches with fascination as the ruby shell crumbles, releasing an energy that makes his entire body vibrate in resonance. The pieces fall to the floor like shattered glass, revealing a form that emanates a dark, almost suffocating power to any living being. A red aura explodes in the chamber, crystals floating in the air as the relic's true form begins to manifest before him. The air around Vikir becomes electrified, Beelzebub's mana recognizing the new master who possesses the correct lineage to awaken it. He observes the transformation, feeling that this is the moment he ceases to be merely a survivor and becomes a conqueror. The boy extends his hand to the condensing energy, a force that promises to devour his enemies and strengthen his own wounded soul. From the depths of the ruby, a dark and red sword emerges, a blade that seems forged from solidified blood and pure crystalline hatred. The Beelzebub sword glows with a malevolent intensity, its form shifting as it interacts with the mana emanating from Vikir in the chamber's center. Ancient runes begin to glow on the blade's surface, sealing a pact that will bind the weapon to young Baskerville's destiny forever. Vikir grips the hilt, feeling an immediate connection, as if the sword were a natural extension of his own arm and will. Suddenly, the image of a giant red insect surges into Vikir's mind, the true form of the demon that originated that cursed blade. Millions of shadowy monsters seem to whisper in his ears, promising power in exchange for a bloodlust that can never be satiated. He sees the silhouettes of the 7 calamities plaguing the world, realizing he now holds the power of one of them in his small hands. A warrior woman from the past appears in a vision battling the great insect Beelzebub in a fight that nearly annihilated the entire continent. The beast was chained and sealed by the Baskerville ancestors, transformed into a tool of destruction for those deemed worthy to wield it. The sword vibrates, responding to Vakir's touch, hungry for blood and ready to reclaim its place as the absolute sovereign of the battlefields. "Now you are mine," the boy whispers, feeling the blade absorb part of his own pain and transform it into lethal, focused energy. Vakir moves the sword, the steel slicing through the air with a sound like the scream of 1,000 souls condemned to eternal suffering in the darkness. Beelzebub's power begins to flow through his arm, healing open wounds and replacing weakness with a strength that shocks everyone. He looks at his hand, where the sword's mark begins to merge with his skin, transforming the boy into a hybrid of man and weapon. The fusion is painful, but Vakir doesn't utter a single sound. He accepts the agony as the necessary price to obtain the strength he so desperately needs. The Beelzebub sword is now a part of him, ready to be summoned at any moment to tear apart those who dare cross his path. He observes the runes on his arm, sensing the sword's hunger for mana and for new abilities it can devour from his fallen opponents. Vakir understands that this weapon is the key to subverting Hugo's expectations and destroying the Baskerville lineage from the inside out. Upon leaving the cave, he is no longer the same boy who entered. His red eyes now carry the sinister gleam of an ancient, ravenous calamity. The scene outside is one of pure devastation, with the Cerberus' body serving as an initial feast for the new weapon Vakir now proudly wields. He approaches the beast's corpse, feeling the bracelet on his arm pulsate with the need to absorb every last drop of energy remaining. The boy observes the fallen three-headed monster and feels a cold pleasure knowing his victory was merely the beginning of something much grander. He extends his hand with the bracelet, beginning the skill extraction process that will make Beelzebub the ultimate weapon of his new life. The wind blows cold, but Vakir is warmed by the power now coursing through his veins, a flame that will never extinguish until his revenge is complete. He gazes at the horizon, where the Baskerville mansion stands as a fortress of oppression, and swears that nothing will remain standing under his command. The boy walks towards the corpse, each step demonstrating a confidence that doesn't belong to a mere 8-year-old child. The bracelet glows intensely upon contact with the Cerberus' blood, the relic's red veins writhing like hungry, lethal tentacles. The monster's body shudders under Vakir's touch, its energy siphoned into the relic in a cascade of black and purplish mana. The process is swift and efficient, leaving behind only a dry, lifeless carcass as Beelzebub strengthens itself with the Guardian's essence. Vakir feels the new ability settling in his mind. The Cerberus' burn now belongs to him, ready to incinerate his enemies in combat. He surveys the surrounding forest, realizing that the relic's presence repels any lesser creature that would have dared to attack him before. The mark on his arm calms, having sated its initial hunger, but Vakir knows that Beelzebub's thirst is infinite and will demand constant sacrifices. He reflects on the power of absorption, realizing he can steal up to 3 abilities simultaneously, making him the most versatile warrior to ever exist. The image of the demon Beelzebub resurfaces, reminding him that the price of power is constant vigilance against the very weapon he now wields. The Cerberus' body is now reduced to almost nothing, proof that Vakir wastes no opportunity to become stronger and more dangerous. He looks at the bracelet again, admiring how the absorbed abilities are listed in his mind like an inventory of death and pain. With a determined movement, he leaves the combat site, leaving behind the echoes of a fight that will enter the mountain's legends. He finds another corpse on the way, a hellhound he killed earlier, and decides he will leave no resource behind on this brutal journey. Vakir's gaze is relentless. He knows that every ounce of stolen mana is one less step towards the definitive collapse of Hugo and his empire. He activates the absorption again, feeling the Hellhound's hemorrhage merge into his arsenal, ensuring his enemy's wounds never stop bleeding. The bracelet proudly displays its acquisitions, Cerberus' burn and Hellhound's hemorrhage. 2 perfect tools for a born Baskerville assassin. Even a rat crushed under the Cerberus' paw serves his purpose, granting him high-speed regeneration, which will be vital in future fights. Vakir smirks with disdain, seeing that even the most insignificant life can be converted into a useful tool for his grand plan of destruction. He disappears among the trees, returning to the cadet camp with the silence of a predator who has just feasted and is ready for more. At the camp, the young cadets are exhausted and terrified, unaware that a monster far worse than the Cerberus now walks silently among them. The atmosphere is one of defeat and fear. But Vikir maintains his facade of indifference, concealing the overwhelming power that now resides beneath his uniform sleeve. Hooded figures observe the students return, their eyes fixed in search of any sign of weakness that could be exploited by the family hierarchy. Inside the mansion, Hugo Le Baskerville awaits the evaluation report, his beard and cold gaze emanating an authority that shocks everyone in the room. The elderly butler approaches with hesitation, holding the report containing the impossible news about the performance of a certain 8-year-old cadet. Hugo listens in silence, his impenetrable expression concealing his growing interest in the son he once considered merely another disposable tool. The butler explains that Vikir not only survived but also struck down an A+ rank Cerberus, something no Guardian Knight would dare do alone. Hugo reflects on the boy's audacity, realizing that the Baskerville lineage has just produced something that defies all logic of their cruel existence. He inquires about the methods used, and the butler reveals the astute use of poison and terrain tactics that would humble veteran strategists of the Empire. Hugo smiles grimly. He doesn't care about the honor of combat, only about the final result and the ability to destroy any opponent. He sees in Vikir a reflection of his own philosophy of iron and blood, but in a much more refined, dangerously intelligent, and lethal form. The butler awaits orders, sensing that the balance of power within the Baskerville family is about to shift drastically and violently. Hugo decides it's time to test Vikir again, wanting to see how far this young wolf's hunger can take him before he attempts to devour his own father. Vikir van Baskerville remains still, his red, icy gaze fixed on the man who once sent him to his death without hesitation. Hugo Le Baskerville, the Iron Patriarch, leans in with predatory curiosity, demanding to know how an 8-year-old brat slew an A-rank beast. With a calm that defies logic, Vikir explains he used chocolate on his spear, a lethal poison for canine monsters that no one present had dared to consider. The butler shivers, seeing father and son delve into matters of life and death without even a formal greeting, realizing this isn't a family conversation, but a duel of wills between two monsters. Vikir shows no emotion. He knows every word is a move on a chessboard where checkmate means the fall of an empire. Hugo smiles darkly, satisfied to see the boy has learned the most important Baskerville lesson. The outcome is all that matters. When asked why he didn't respond to the butler earlier, Vikir fires a cutting truth. The butler is not his master. Hugo then asks who commands his loyalty, and Vikir replies with an assassin's precision. The clan master is his master. The Patriarch laughs, impressed by the audacity, and declares the Cerberus's corpse entirely the boy's, also promising to grant him a wish. Hugo's eyes gleam when Vikir makes his request. He wants free entry to the Library of 10,000 Epistles, the family's most sacred sanctuary. Vikir knows that if the request is denied, he'll have to infiltrate. He won't stop until he has what he needs in his hands. The ensuing silence is suffocating, but Hugo breaks the tension with a laugh, granting access and something even more shocking. He orders Vikir to study the 6th Baskerville technique, a level of power never before granted to an illegitimate Van child. The boy maintains his facade, but inside he smirks with disdain, knowing Hugo has no idea what he truly seeks. A black sword flashes in Vikir's mind, the memory of the blood and iron lineage he intends to completely subvert. He recalls the guillotine and the life of discrimination he suffered, vowing that in this existence, he will be the one holding the blade. The knowledge he seeks is beyond simple techniques. He searches for the essence of the first patriarch, the man who subjugated disasters. Hugo watches his son depart, unaware he is handing the keys to his own abyss to the one he considers merely a tool. Vikir accepts the challenge with a gaze that could freeze hell, vowing to surpass all expectations of that executioner. Upon reaching the library doors, 2 elite guards block the way, their eyes hidden by dark glasses, exuding an aura of constant danger. Vikir's footsteps echo in the stone corridor, each beat a reminder of the time he cannot waste on his path of revenge. The immense hall opens, revealing shelves that touch the ceiling, a labyrinth of knowledge where secrets and lies are buried under centuries of dust. His hands glide over the spines of books, ignoring the works of art and focusing on what truly holds the power to break destiny. The glint in Vikir's red eyes betrays his hunger for power, a thirst that won't be sated with mere crumbs of common knowledge. He locates a chained, heavy, ancient volume, guarded as if it were the most dangerous weapon in the family's arsenal. With the key in hand, he faces the padlock separating the past from the future he intends to rewrite with blood. The metal clicks and the chains fall, freeing the weight of history that has been hidden even from the most loyal clan members. Sitting on the library floor, Vikir begins to turn the pages, his mind processing information at a superhuman regressor's speed. The image of a hungry maw appears between the pages, symbolizing the veracity of the Baskerville sword technique. He ignores the sixth technique Hugo offered him, diving instead into texts others would deem trash or mere historical curiosities. The guards watch from afar, surprised to see such a young boy focused on books that seem to hold no practical value whatsoever. They whisper amongst themselves, questioning whether young Master Vikir understands what he's doing, or if he's merely a child lost in his own arrogance. Vikir briefly stares at them, his gaze sharp enough to silence any doubt before returning to his silent, obsessive study. He walks to the more secluded sections where miscellaneous books are left to rot, far from the eyes of warriors hungry for immediate power. The profile of his face reveals absolute determination. He knows the true treasure is hidden in plain sight beneath a cloak of mediocrity. The shelves seem to close in around him, creating a cocoon of silence where only the rustle of turning pages breaks the heavy atmosphere. Vikir continues his search, moving with the precision of a hunter who knows every inch of his territory, even if it's his first time there. He stops before a specific volume, feeling a familiar vibration echoing in his soul, scarred by decades of past battles. His hands grip the book bearing strange weathered symbols, an object most would dismiss as a broken, useless relic. It is an ambush lurking, the manual containing the torn secrets of the forbidden technique Hugo desperately sought in another life. The pages are torn and stained, but Vikir holds the missing pieces etched in his memory from when he was merely a hunting dog. A malicious smile creeps onto his face. He now possesses the ultimate tool to surpass his father and all who dare cross his path. Meanwhile, Hugo remains in his quarters, surrounded by shadowy advisors and guards discussing the future of his bloody lineage. He has no idea that the pages of an old book are being deciphered by a mind that has already witnessed the end of the world. The patriarch reflects on the boy, sensing that something has drastically changed, as if a wolf has awakened within the lamb. Vikir plunges even deeper, connecting the dots between sword theory and the flow of mana coursing through his young veins. He remembers how Hugo went mad, chasing after the lost pages, sending hordes of soldiers to their deaths in search of absolute power. The war map unfolds in his mind, the invasion arrows the Baskerville clan launched against the Empire's other great families. Vikir sees the image of his father, kneeling before the power of the 10th technique, an obsession that cost the lives of thousands of loyal servants. He recalls the moment in his past life when he delivered the recovered pages to Hugo, receiving only a cold compliment in return. The regret of having been a loyal dog burns in his chest, transforming into a dark fuel for his current evolution. The boy swears that in this life, the blood spilled will only be that of his enemies, starting with those who betrayed him. He focuses on the lines between the text where the ancestors' calligraphy reveals the hidden paths to blade perfection. Vikir now understands why he could never surpass the 4th technique before. He never had access to the complete original manuscript. The secret of the 10th technique is revealed before his red eyes, a dance of death that transcends common human limits. He realizes that the first step to supreme power is similar to the basics, but demands an aggressiveness only a true predator possesses. The moon shines through the library window, illuminating the boy who seems to merge with the shadows surrounding him. Time outside seems to stop, while inside Vikir, a mana storm begins to form, swirling around his core. He enters a meditative trance, memorizing every word and every diagram until the book becomes part of his own flesh. His hands tremble slightly with the surge of energy beginning to circulate, a power his 8-year-old body can barely contain. Vikir knows he must reach the greater level before he turns 15 to stand any chance against the destiny awaiting him. He rises, the air around him growing dense and charged with static electricity, the bookshelves groaning under the pressure of his nascent aura. The boy closes his eyes, visualizing the enemy, projecting his will into the emptiness of the silent, sacred library. An ethereal figure begins to manifest before him, a reflection of the warrior he was and the monster he is becoming. Red energy explodes from his pores, a raw manifestation of power that consumes the surrounding oxygen in invisible flames. He alternates between shades of blue and red, balancing the strategist's calm with the berserker's fury in a ballet of mana. The aura projection takes on monstrous forms, energy teeth, and claws that seem to want to devour reality itself. Vikir channels everything into a single point, feeling the breaking of the barriers that had limited his potential since birth. He visualizes his evolution in phases, seeing the Hound become the wolf, and the wolf become the nightmare that dwells in the darkness. In a sudden movement, he attacks the ethereal figure, each blow a note in a perfectly orchestrated symphony of destruction. The aura explodes into fragments of light and shadow, marking the birth of a power the world is not prepared to face. Far away, the butler feels a chiss down his spine, a primal instinct warning him that something dangerous has just been unleashed. He looks in the direction of the library, his wrinkled face bearing an expression of doubt and growing dread. Vakir emerges from the shadows of the trance, his body exhausted, but his eyes shining with a clarity only gods possess. He looks at his own hands, feeling the constant and powerful flow of liquid mana running through his energy channels. The boy reached the greater stage in just one day, a feat that defies all historical records of the Baskerville family. He walks to the window, observing the mansion courtyard, knowing that every person down there is a piece in his grand plan. Vakir knows that true strength lies not just in the sword, but in the ability to deceive and subvert everyone's expectations. He feels a fleeting fury remembering the lost years of his previous life, a rage he quickly converts into absolute focus. The boy almost collapses from exhaustion, but his regressor spirit keeps him standing, pushing him beyond any biological limit. He stabilizes himself, adjusting his posture, breathing deeply the cold air that seeps through the old window's crack. A dark smile crosses his lips as he realizes he can now draw the fifth Baskerville tooth, something impossible before. His hand glows with an intense red aura, a promise that the next time he draws a sword, the ground will be soaked. The silhouette of the warrior he has become casts an immense shadow on the wall, revealing the true scale of his hidden power. Vakir knows he doesn't care about Hugo's sixth technique, he now holds the map to the 10th absolute perfection. Two figures of red aura seem to watch him from the void, the ghosts of Cain and Abel, who failed where he finally triumphed. He then turns to the book, an ambush lurking, deciding that no one else will have the privilege of reading those dangerous truths. Outside, the guards approach, smelling smoke and feeling the heat emanating from the reading room. With the calm of one executing a perfect crime, Vakir pockets what he needs. Then the book begins to glow intensely, being consumed by an otherworldly flame, erasing its record forever. The boy's face is illuminated by the fire, his red eyes reflecting the destruction of the only evidence that could betray him. Ashes scatter through the air, dancing in the moonlight as Baskerville's forbidden history is reduced to nothing but smoke. The guards burst into the room, finding Vakir standing before the ashes, displaying an expression of feigned shock and childlike vulnerability. He pretends to be terrified, explaining with a trembling voice that he accidentally left a magnifying glass under the light and caused the fire. The men in suits smile condescendingly, relieved to see it was just an innocent child's mistake in an area of useless books. Vakir apologizes repeatedly, playing the role of the grateful illegitimate son who doesn't want to cause trouble for the clan. Feeling superior, the guards dismiss it as nothing, telling him not to worry about an old, worthless book. They even offer to keep it a secret, unaware that they are, in fact, helping to cover the tracks of the monster who will devour them in the future. Vakir thanks them with a polite smile, assuring them they will be rewarded for their kindness and discretion. As soon as they turn their backs, the boy's smile twists into a sneer of contempt. He despises them for their stupidity and lack of foresight. Sometime later, the scene shifts to an immense arena, where the sand is ready to be stained red for the first time that day. Hugo sits on his observation throne, flanked by the bespectacled butler and Vakir himself, who awaits his next test. The patriarch asks what he learned in the library, his gaze trying to pierce his son's mask of indifference. Vakir vaguely describes the sensation of aura, calling it something warm and viscous, purpose hiding his true mastery. Hugo exchanges a surprised look with the butler, excited by the possibility that the boy might already be manifesting an aura of his own. He tries to restrain himself, reminding himself that Vakir is only 8 years old and such a feat would be an unprecedented miracle in the Empire. The boy looks down, hiding the gleam of scorn in his eyes. He is manipulating Hugo's emotions as if they were the strings of a lute. The crowd of cadets and warriors murmurs in anticipation, sensing that something extraordinary is about to happen on the arena's sand. Uniformed youths watch with envy and fear, knowing that Vakir is already a legend among the initiates after the Cerberus incident. Vakir descends to the center of the Colosseum, wielding a simple sword that seems too small for the power he now carries. Hugo decides it's time to test his son's real abilities and orders the creature specially prepared for this moment to be brought forth. The boy prepares himself, his posture instantly changing from a fragile child to that of a predator ready for the ultimate kill. A massive orc is dragged into the arena, bound by thick chains that creak under its brute, uncontrolled strength. The beast roars, its red eyes glowing with a bloodlust that makes the cadets in the stands recoil in terror. The youths whisper that it's overkill to send a rank C monster against a child, believing Vikir won't survive even a minute. The orc snorts, smoke billowing from its nostrils as it glares at the small human who looks like a toy before its colossal stature. Hugo watches from above without a shred of remorse, ready to see his son torn apart or prove himself worthy of the Baskerville blood. The chains are released with a metallic clang, unleashing the green fury that charges at Vikir like an avalanche of muscle and hate. The monster bares its sharp teeth in a grotesque smile, anticipating the taste of young flesh it is about to savor. Vikir doesn't move until the last second, his mind calculating the exact trajectory of the attack with a precision that borders on the divine. With a fluid motion, he evades the brutal charge, his blade leaving a silvery trail that cuts the air with a musical note. The boy's gaze is devoid of fear. To him, that orc is just a sack of potatoes that needs to be properly sliced. He counterattacks with a speed that the cadet's eyes can barely follow, hitting the beast's vital points with surgical strikes. The crowd falls into absolute silence, the shock of seeing a child dominate a rank C orc freezing the words in their throats. The orc roars in pain and frustration, desperately trying to crush the opponent, who seems to be made of shadows and wind. Vikir spins around the monster, each step a perfect example of the swordsmanship he honed over decades of systematic slaughter. He strikes the creature's leg with a dry blow that makes the giant stumble as the hemorrhage skill's effect begins to take hold. Blood gushes from the orc's wounds, refusing to clot, a sinister courtesy of the hellhound's poison that now runs on Vikir's sword. Other orcs in nearby cages roar in agony, sensing the terror emanating from their companion, who is being mercilessly hunted. A brown-haired cadet watches the scene with an open mouth, unable to process the level of skill he is witnessing. He sees the glint of Vikir's sword and feels that this is not the power of a normal human, but something out of nightmares. Three young sword masters in the background exchange looks of pure terror, realizing that their own position in the clan is being threatened by a prodigy. Hugo leans forward, his hands gripping the throne's armrest, the interest in his gaze transforming into a dark obsession. The orc falls to its knees, blood forming a vast pool in the sand, its accelerated regeneration completely nullified by Vikir's power. The patriarch realizes that the boy is not just fighting, he is humiliating the monster, demonstrating a technical superiority that borders on insult. The elderly butler wipes his glasses, trembling as he realizes that the aura emanating from Vikir is that of a true greater. The boy stops before the fallen beast, his expression impenetrable as he prepares the final blow that will end this spectacle of horrors. He raises his sword, the blade shining with an intensity that seems to devour the sunlight falling on the bloody arena. The metal descends like lightning, piercing the orc's throat and silencing its screams forever in a cruel coup de grace. The ensuing silence is more deafening than the beast's roars. No one dares to breathe before the display of absolute power. The orc's corpse remains on the ground, a monument to the rise of a new predator within the Empire's most dangerous house. Vikir wipes the blood from his blade on his sleeve, turning to Hugo with a smile that doesn't reach his red, hungry eyes. The patriarch's face is a mask of shock. He has just witnessed the impossible and doesn't know whether to celebrate or fear his own son. The boy walks towards the dais, his aura still vibrating with the adrenaline of combat, challenging everyone with his mere presence. Hugo asks if he is aware of what he has just done, his voice laden with an authority that is about to be tested. The butler declares that they have just witnessed the birth of a genius who will surpass all legends of the 7 great families. Vikir simply replies that the orc was too weak, then asks with a cynical smile if there's nothing stronger to truly test him. Hugo tries to maintain his composure, but inwardly he seethes with the complex mixture of pride and paranoia that defines the Baskerville family. The patriarch and the butler watch the 8-year-old boy who just effortlessly slew an orc, feeling the world's balance irrevocably shift. Vikir holds his father's gaze, revealing only a fraction of the darkness residing within his soul, ready to devour anyone who dares to stop him.